loyalty. The guiding light of all Pegasus ponies in the war. When Equestria was threatened by greedy, treacherous, and superstitious foes, the Pegasus ponies of Cloudsdale, Las Pegasus, and scores of smaller cloud cities all across the realm responded as only the Pegasi could. To defend their beloved homeland, they beat the plowshares of male ponies and weather team members into the lightning-forged sword of Equestria's armies. Slowly at first, but with rising confidence, the air wings of the Equestrian military triumphed over everything the zebras could throw at them. Griffin auxiliaries, bizarre weapons enhanced with zebra magic, dragons. And they did it all in the name of loyalty. Loyalty to their princesses, loyalty to their fellow ponies, loyalty to the greatest Pegasus of them all, Rainbow Dash. But there could be no triumph over the combined effects of equestrian and Zebrican mega spells. In the poisonous aftermath of the war, which the Pegasi had fought to the last full measure, the survivors of the war and the destruction of Cloudsdale looked out over a wounded and perhaps dying Equestria, cities aflame or swirling with deadly poisons, stables shut mercilessly to the desperately pounding hooves of those unlucky enough not to die instantly in the final moments of the war, a sun and moon with no sovereign to guide them. The smoke of Equestria's massive funeral pyre was already rising, filling the skies with the same corruption which was ending all life on the ground. And so, just as loyalty had demanded action in the face of zebra aggression, it demanded action again in the face of this new foe. It demanded triage. A massive white bandage pressed to Equestria's near-mortal wounds, the closed sky bought vital time by blocking the poisons from below from killing those who had survived above. The Pegasi was shaken, but alive to rebuild their shattered civilization. But with precious food supplies and resources dwindling, how was recovery even possible? What should be done? Should the Pegasus clans forge on ahead, carrying with them the future of a broken Equestria? Should they throw caution to the wind and brave the deadly atmosphere below the clouds to provide what succor they could to ponies already dying from zebra chemical weapons and the terrible and inevitable effects of magical radiation exposure? In the end, there was only one possible answer. With such limited resources, the Pegasus survivors would exhaust and destroy themselves to give false hope to those whose fate was set the moment the megaspells dropped. The cold calculus of realism demanded that those who could be saved, even at the cost of those who could not. Not all could accept this brutal but necessary choice, a choice that doomed all the Pegasi to a life of servitude, as they enslaved themselves to the future of Equestria. Some shouted, some fought, some simply disappeared, seeking the escape of death below the cloud layer, rather than face the decades of arduous work ahead of the chosen few who would allow Equestria to rise phoenix-like from the ashes of the war. To the eternal shame of all Pegasi, one of those poor souls was the greatest Pegasus of them all, the mayor of the Ministry of Awesome, Rainbow Dash. Fatigued by a decade of war and distraught by the death of her friends and rulers, the pony who had sacrificed so much found herself unwilling to make this last and final sacrifice. Crazed, she argued for fast action on the ground, action that would burn precious resources, easing Equestria's death rather than ensuring its survival. In the end, Rainbow Dash disappeared, yet another name on the grim list of the dead. Step by careful step, the refugees of the war gathered the strength needed to wrest Equestria's corpse back from the radiation-twisted carrion worms that infested everything below the cloud layer. And finally, decades after the fall of the old Equestria, the survivors, now rechristened the Grand Pegasus Enclave, dropped below the cloud layer to make good on their ancestors' promises. Fear not, Equestria. We are coming. Yes, fear not, Equestria. With those words and a sense of relief that the long-awaited rebirth was nearly at hand, the great Pegasus Enclave came. Its armoured champions dropped from the sky to bring order to the crushing anarchy of the Equestrian wasteland. And with them they brought the relief long planned, but long delayed by circumstance. Enclave shock troops battled the implacable monstrosities given life by the folly of ponies long dead, the twisted mutant alicorns, parodies of the former rulers of pony kind, the slavers and raiders, creatures long since driven insane by their own short-sighted desires. But unfortunately, not all saw the good the Enclave was doing. In their narrow and blinkered sight, dimmed and clouded by a life which had known only brutality, they looked at salvation and saw only terror, and, like a rabid beast, it lashed out against its apparent foe. In its excited haste finally to act, the Enclave had failed to realise what it truly faced, not mere anarchy, but a brutal oligarchy of warlords, slave drivers and false messiahs. Under coming Pax Equestria, these craven parasites stood to lose everything. In a time of peace and order, warlords like the leader of the Talon Company would fade into obsolescence. With the return of a free and law-bound market economy, slave drivers could be hunted to extinction, ground under hoof, on the climb back to prosperity. And then there were the false messiahs, voices of so-called truth like the so-called DJ Pon-3, held the attention of thousands who devoured his morsels of false hope and fairy tale perfection like the finest of feasts. With the realization of Equestria's true hope, ponies like DJ Pon-3 would go from near gods themselves to just one more voice on the revitalized airwaves. In retrospect, it was no wonder that these predators in pony, these carrion eaters on the corpse of Equestria, were combined to thwart the nation's rebirth. All efforts to convince the Wastelanders otherwise were for naught. Simple pacification missions escalated into all-out firefights. Careful diplomatic talks degraded into shouting matches. Every instance of self-defense by an Enclave Pegasus was painted as a crime by those who feared the return of true civilization. In the end, beset on all sides by the enemies of civilization, the Enclave struggled with the doggedness that was its birthright and failed. To defend everything is to defend nothing, and the toxic miasma of the wasteland finally weakened the Grand Pegasus Enclave enough for the savage mare, known as the Lightbringer, to deliver the final blow.